tonight's big stories. President Marcos.
The number of civilian agencies seeking confidential funds is growing. At least 28 agencies now want confidential and intelligence funds in their budgets. Jeepney drivers and operators say that they have yet to receive the fuel subsidy promised by the government. Even the LTFRB is unsure as to the cause of delay.
Welcome to the show. I'm Regina Lay.
I'm Danny Laurel. And I'm Sean Yao.
Okay, guess who turned 66 today?
I'm just gonna guess
me.
who.
Not any of us. I just wanted to be clear about that.
Of course, it's President
Exactly.
Bongbong
This
Marcos.
picture is right there.
Yes.
President Bongbong Marcos,
In
of
Singapore.
course. But forget about going to Malacanang to greet him because he's in Singapore, well, for work and play. The president spoke before CEOs and top investors at the 10th Asia Summit hosted by the Milken Institute. Apparently, he was late by half an hour. His talk was supposed to start 3:30 p.m., but he didn't start until 31 minutes later. And he said there were issues with his flight and luggage.
As we have just come from Manila and mix-ups with luggage and such. So I did not think it would be appropriate for me to come in my shorts, so I thought I should wait for my suit.
But yeah, presidents aren't spared the indignity of mixed-up luggage.
He flew in shorts?
In any
He
case,
had no other clothes.
in any case, Marcos highlighted programs like tax reform and improved digitalization in the Philippines, as well as the opportunities with the Maharlika Investment Fund. He emphasized to investors that the fund will be managed by professionals and will help ease borrowings while pushing economic growth for the Philippines. He also said the Philippines is trying to rely less on importation.
We cannot now continue to depend on importation, which is what has happened for the Philippines. In the past years, it became the easy way out. The pandemic showed us that this was not a wise choice. The aspiration, once again, is that we are able to provide sufficient supply of food at prices that people can afford. And that's still, we are not there yet, but we have made many important steps to start that. We are trying to put the value chain, especially of agriculture, we're trying to put that value chain together from all the way from R&D, all the way to retail, to the market.
But it's not all work, though. President Marcos is set to attend the Formula One Grand Prix there, just like last year. Recall that last year, Malacanang had been mum about his trip. People only found out after photos started leaking on social media, showing that his son, Representative Sandro Marcos, and House Speaker Martin Romualdez were also there.
Well, he's not usually late, but you're right. Early on, when you were reading that piece of news, I was shocked that one, well, he flew in shorts apparently, and two, makes up with flights and luggages.
I know, I was
And
like,
his
he's
team
the
doesn't
president.
bring him extra clothes just in case
And he
that
can't
happens.
I have a mental image of him waiting at the terminal. I mean,
In shorts.
Singapore terminal is fantastic, but
Yeah.
like waiting there for his luggage, or maybe it didn't happen that way, but still, a president's luggage getting mixed up with something else, I don't know.
And which airline is the
Naku,
big question there?
I know, I don't want to
Look at that
mention
here.
it. But
He is off for the Formula One Grand Prix again.
yes.
But this time around, he actually added this conference, this Milken Institute Asian Summit
Yes.
of sorts,
Asia Summit.
which is usually it doesn't usually have presidents.
He's
there,
actually the
does it?
first president to be attending
Correct.
this. So he's starting a trend, maybe.
Exactly.
Happens to also be on the F1 weekend and his birthday.
Yes.
But the question is, what will he be doing tomorrow? It's only Thursday, and I know the F1 starts on Friday, right?
yes,
Yeah.
you're right. Good question. I don't know. Maybe
Meeting
sorting out the luggage.
More investors.
But the reason it was controversial last year was because, remember, he had flown to Singapore just days after Typhoon Cardine. Right? This time around, it begs the question, okay, there's no typhoons, but we are in the midst of a food crisis, right? Rice crisis, right?
I think also, Reg, it's important to point out that last year he did not disclose that he was gonna go there. It was a lot of people with cell phones, and we started seeing photos of Sandra Marcos,
Yeah.
of course, Speaker Romualdez there. And the internet was very unhappy that he didn't just say that he went there.
Yeah.
And which funds were used, you know,
Yes.
which were never necessarily completely answered or
Yeah.
addressed, especially for the other entourage.
Yes.
What-
The
One more
question
thing.
was,
yeah.
did he use the Gulf Stream, for instance, that President Duterte bought in 2019? Was that used to fly President Marcos there? We don't know to this point.
What we do know is the tickets of F1 are expensive, regardless.
And he has paddock tickets that are
And
apparently
he has
$8,000.
other people around him.
Which are VIP tickets, right? They're upwards of what, 8,000-9,000?
Unless, of course, Singapore sponsors the whole contingent.
One other thing about the trip last year was that days after the controversy, President Marcos himself posted on Facebook saying that it was a productive trip and, quote unquote, racing is the best way to drum up business. And then he went on to say that we're going to share details of the investments shortly, but that never came to pass, right? So to this day, we don't know what sort of investments that trip last year generated.
Or whether he's following up on that this
Maybe,
year.
could
This
be.
year,
It-
maybe,
I
because
mean,
I think it's
fair.
his third trip
To
to Singapore and
yeah.
since that F1
Yeah.
last year.
And fair, I mean, investments take time to materialize,
Materialize.
right? So I don't know at this point.
Continuing
Hopefully, there
relationships
is something
with that.
there.
All right, now in other news, we've been looking at this for quite some time. More agencies are asking for confidential funds in their 2024 budget, now at 28 from just 21 7 years ago. All this while Intel funds for security agencies have remained stagnant.
In fact, the total proposed confidential and intelligence funds for 2024 has ballooned to over 10 billion pesos from just around 500 to 600 million pesos during the time of former presidents Arroyo and Aquino. Tonight, we break down the numbers. We have Elaine Fulgencio with the big story.
The Department of Information and Communications Technology is seeking some 300 million pesos in confidential funds for next year. The agency says this is essential for them to go after scammers through intelligence and investigations.
Part of the mandate of the ICT is to go after these scammers. At wala po kaming nakatali pong kamay namin if we do not have this kind of capability.
The DICT is just one in the growing number of agencies that want to have confidential funds in their budgets. From 21 in 2016, 28 departments are now seeking for confidential funds under the proposed 2024 spending plan. The total proposed confidential and intelligence funds across all agencies for next year stands at 10.14 billion pesos. That includes the 4.5 billion pesos for the Office of the President and the 500 million pesos for the Office of the Vice President. On top of those, President Marcos and Vice President Sara Duterte also have access to more confidential funds, with both the agencies they're heading also seeking such appropriations for 2024. The Department of Agriculture, headed by Marcos, is proposing some 50 million pesos in CIFs, while the Education Department, headed by Duterte, is calling for 150 million pesos, which the Vice President says will be used for the agency's anti-insurgency efforts. It's not new for government agencies to have confidential and intelligence funds, especially for agencies that are concerned with the country's security. What's new, however, is the rise of such appropriations not for intelligence and security services, but for civilian agencies. Take a look at this chart. The combined confidential and intelligence funds across all agencies in 2010, or the last year of the Gloria Arroyo administration, stood at 600 million pesos. That's already a huge sum at the time. In the last year of the late former President Noynoy Aquino, the amount slightly went down to 500 million pesos. But that's followed by a huge jump by the end of the Rodrigo Duterte administration, with CIFs reaching 4.5 billion pesos, even bigger than the total budget of some agencies. Now, in the first year of the Bongbong Marcos administration, the CIF remained at 4.5 billion pesos. But under the 2024 budget, proposed confidential and intelligence funds more than doubled to 10.14 billion pesos. Now, let's take a look at the confidential funds of our vice presidents. Former Vice President Arroyo had 5.1 million in the year 2000, the same for Ginggona in 2002. This climbed during the time of Noli de Castro to 6 billion pesos and then again for Jojo Binay in 2011. The only vice president who did not have confidential funds during her term was Vice President Leni Robredo. And now, current VP Sara Duterte is asking for 500 million pesos and CIFs for the OVP, a huge leap from her predecessors. Why are the higher confidential funds controversial? First, much of these funds are allocated for civilian agencies that have nothing to do with security. In fact, in 2021, the CIFs given to the Defense Department in 2021 is not even half of the CIFs of Malacanang. Second, the auditing of intel and confidential funds has become more lenient, with former President Duterte vetoing a budget provision that requires quarterly intel reports to Congress. Even the Ombudsman Summer Martires believes a receipt for confidential funds are not important, and the only thing needed is a certification that these are not used for corrupt activities. With this, a former lawmaker and Bayan Muna chair Nery Colmenares says this confidential funds should be brought to the Supreme Court for clarification and resolution. Reporting for News 5, Elaine Fulgencio, we are One News.
Well, our guest tonight has been involved in a word war with Vice President Sara Duterte over these confidential funds. Let me bring in ACT Teachers Party List Representative Franz Castro. Representative Castro, thanks for joining us this evening. Before I get into the confidential funds issue, I wanted your thoughts on President Marcos being back in Singapore. I recall last year when he flew off to Singapore to watch the F1, you had issued some statements about it. This time around, the difference is they at least disclose it prior to the trip. What do you have to say about it?
Well, that is that is the product of the frauding of people, di ba, on the trip of the president. So it's a welcome welcome move on the part of the president to tell us, but it's still the going to F1 is still extravagant.
It's extravagant. So may issue pa rin po kayo that he's in Singapore right now?
Well, okay naman po kasi meron naman pong yung mga foreign investors enjoining foreign investors to go here in the Philippines. So wala naman pong problem doon So if he is using his own money for the F1, that would be no problem for us.
Good to know. Thank you so much for that. Let's talk about the confi funds. Representative Castro, your reaction to Vice President Sara Duterte's statements. Of course, you guys have been exchanging statements the last several days. Yung latest, as far as I know from her, was that she says you gave a legal opinion and you're not a lawyer, and also you're not an editor, and she doesn't respect you. What do you have to say to that, please?
Well, I respect her opinion and freedom of speech. But even if I'm not a lawyer, kahit na ako ay teacher lang, makikita naman natin kung ano yung anomaly or seemingly misused of funds. So pinakita naman natin through documents where we coming from dun sa sinasabi natin na 125 million na kinuha sa contingent fund ng president. So tingin natin this is unlawful and illegal. So dapat talaga wala talagang confidential fund during that time ang office of the vice president.
Ma'am, did you consult po legal experts on your opinion that you expressed, or any of the lawmakers? You mentioned as well that this would have needed congressional authorization. Did you get that from some sources po?
Yes, I have legal staff, competent legal staff. So also we also consulted our lawyers in the Makabayan block, and through the years na binubusisi natin ang budget, napag-aralan na natin alin yung dapat na ano yung mga line item, ano yung ibig sabihin ng contingent fund, yung confidential fund, what is savings, what is lawful and unlawful in the GAA. So, di mo naman siguro kailangan na maging lawyer. So, you have just to analyze yung mga budget saan napupunta, kasi meron naman siyang general and special provisions that one should follow. that a government agency should follow. Kaya nadoon naman yun. Kaya talagang tingin natin, hindi naman siguro kailangan na lawyer or na ikaw ay nagsasalita in order for you to to tell to the people na may something like misuse or unlawful na ginagawa ang ahensya.
Congressman Franz, ano ba talaga? Linawin na natin, because we've also heard Congresswoman Kimbo in a television interview, she was defending the fact na merong item pero walang amount. Dapat ba may zero doon just to say may amount kahit zero siya? Kasi as it stands, di ba, blanco yon. So ano ba talaga yung...
Well, kagaya nga ng sinabi natin.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Ko.
I think she froze.
Okay, mukhang nawala
Mukhang
si...
nag-freeze yung Zoom.
Intelligence.
There. She's back. Hello, Kong. Sorry, nawala kayo ng saglit. Ano po yung sagot?
Well, totoo namang wala. Wala talagang item. Doon wala talagang item na nakalagay sa 2022 budget. Although may heading siya na confidential fund, intelligence fund, extraordinary expenses, pero wala siyang nakalagay talaga na na line item. Pag sinabi nating line item, there is an amount. Pero hindi mo pwedeng sabihing zero. So kaya kami nagkaroon ng conflict of maybe opinion ni Representative Stella Kimbo kasi pinagpipilitan niya na kapag kahit na walang zero ay pwede pa rin daw at merong confidential fund. So malinaw yung sinasabi ng GAA, if there is no expressly provided for budgetary allocation. Nakalagay po 'yan sa isang provision doon sa confidential fund. Kaya hindi pwede siyang sabihin na kung wala siyang amount ay merong zero. So that's tingin ko mali na sabihin na merong line item.
Kung follow-up lang doon, ang 2022 budget pa yun yung issue na yun. Ano bang magyayari doon? Ganun na lang ba? Pag-uusapan na lang natin at yun na yung huling hantungan? Or are you going to pursue this? And what are the options available if you do want to pursue this issue?
Meron pa rin namang plenary discussion by next week. I still pursue my questioning with the Office of the Vice President. So ipo-pursue pa rin natin yan. We need that for our legal action just in case. Tapos we will do we are studying yung mga legal actions kasi may mga sinasabi na dito na merong culpable violation of law of the Constitution, yung mga laws like yung technical malversation, etc. We still have to study it.
Sino po ba pwede mag-decide with finality? Supreme Court din po ba? Kung para lang matanong na natin once and for all, ano ba talaga yung rule? Since this already came up, we can clarify. Yeah.
Yes, when it comes to question of the law, question of the Constitution, it is the Supreme Court who will decide kung ito ba lawful or unlawful, allowed or not allowed. And even here in the in COA, dapat nasagot din nila ako In fact, in my interpellation, I asked them to investigate. So kasi wala silang adverse na audit observations.
Rep, are you just questioning the confidential funds for the Education Department because, of course, this is your advocacy, and the OVP, or are you questioning the fact that there's 10.14 billion pesos allocated in confidential funds, and if so, what specifically are you questioning there?
And more agencies asking for it.
We are questioning all agencies that are asking for confidential funds na hindi naman nila mandate. There are agencies that do not have mandate of like security, investigation, etc. May kinalaman sa national security, kaya nga iniisa-isa namin yung mga agency. It is a trending that all agents, almost all, ang daming mga agencies na, from 20, naging 28 na yan. So, kina-question namin lahat, not only on the OVP. Nagkaroon lang ng special emphasis dito sa OVP kasi may nakita nga kaming anomalya noong 2022.
Actually, itong word war ninyo, no, with Vice President Sara, it's really ongoing. In fact, the Vice President also gave you a special mention sa isang speech niya noong Monday. Sa Peace Village po ito, sa Davao. Pakinggan po muna natin and get your reaction after.
You took out words doon sa batas and you interpret it this way. Sabi nila, huwag niyo na basahin yung 3 words dyan. Basta makinig lang kayo sa interpretation namin. Yan ang ginagawa ni Castro. Ngayon. At ng buong Makabayan Bloc. Kasi alam nila na ginagamit namin ang pera para hanapin yung koneksyon nila sa mga NPA.
Kong.
Well, katulad nga na sinabi ko, no, malaya siya na magsalita. Pero as a Vice President, dapat sine-check niya pa rin yung mga facts na sinasabi niya sa publiko at hindi niya rin trabaho na hanapan kami ng connection namin sa NPA dahil matagal na namin itong sinagot. In fact, may mga kinaso na nga sa amin na disqualification sa COMELEC pero hindi naman nila napatunayan ito na related kami doon sa sinasabi nilang CPP-NPA. At dapat atupagin na lang niya yung problema natin sa education. Kasi malala talaga yung problema natin sa education, like yung mga enrollment, yung enrollment talaga natin. Hanapin niya yun. Bakit meron tayong more or less 3 million na mga bata na hindi pa rin nag-enroll hanggang sa ngayon? Dapat yun ang tignan niya at hindi yung connection namin sa NPA dahil kami naman, sinasabi naman natin talaga dito na wala kaming connect at kami talaga ay nagtatrabaho para doon sa advocacy namin at sa advocacy ng aming mga constituents.
Rep, she mentioned po that you have a kaso ng human trafficking and kidnapping. Do you want to comment on that?
Well, that is a lie. Okay? So that is a lie. Wala po akong naging kaso ng kidnapping and child trafficking. Di sana nasa kulungan na po ako, di ba? Kasi unveilable ito. So noong finailan po ako ng kaso noong 2018 doon sa Tagum. So kinaso po nila sa amin 'yan. Kasama diyan si Castro at saka yung iba pa no ng mga teachers and bishops. Pero yan ay sa level pa lang ng prosecutor. Yan ay dinrap na. So meron natirang trump-up cases na child abuse daw na yun ang hinaharap natin sa ngayon mula noong 2018 hanggang ngayon.
Speaking of issues in education, what did you think of this proposal to remove Marcos dictatorship or Dictadurang Marcos sa curriculum? The DepEd has already said it's not anything, it's no political pressure, it's nothing to do with any of the issues going on politically. What do you think?
So that is, we think that is a historical revisionism. Pinapalitan nito no yung truth and facts sa kasaysayan natin. And this is also an insult to thousands of victims of human rights violations during the martial law days. In fact, there is a law that give reparation to the victims of human rights violation. Tapos meron din naman ngayon with that law yung monument ng human rights na gagawin sa UP. So tingin natin it is the right of the students in the basic education to know the truth and facts what happened during the martial law. At hindi pwedeng tanggalin yung Marcos na name kasi parang katulad niya may kriminal pero hindi mo naman sinasabi anong pangalan ng kriminal, magnanakaw at sino yung magnanakaw na yon. So nonsense kapag sinabi mo lang na diktadurya. So it should retain yung diktaduryang Marcos.
Alright,
Okay.
Kung saglit lang, no, I'll just have to ask this one question. Nabanggit nyo kanina, no, na magpa-plenary pa nga, syempre, itong budget deliberations. We know this is a long and tedious process for you all. Pagdating doon, given na nasa minority kayo, I think 24 kayo na nasa minority out of 300. Do you think mabibigay, magagrant lahat nung hininging confidential funds amounting to over 10 billion?
Well, nakikita naman natin yung outrage ng ating mga kababayan about this 10 billion. So kung sa maximum matanggal talaga ito, sa minimum mabawasan ito at ma-rechannel yung confidential funds in social services and other expenses that are knowable. So ibig sabihin that can be auditable. So hindi pwede yung ganitong parang secret lang yung confidential. So win na kami kapag nabawasan at nawala itong confidential fund, lalong-lalo na sa DepEd, at itong mabawasan yung confidential fund ni OVP o mawala. So yun na, tsaka yung mga ahensya na hindi naman talaga dapat na merong confidential funds.
All right, we're just going to have to see how that plays out. We thank you so much for joining us tonight. ACT Teachers Party List Representative Franz Castro.
Now, pausing for a quick break, but right after that. Drivers and operators have yet to receive subsidies promised to be rolled out by the government today. The details when we return. Keep it here on One News.
Welcome back. You're watching Big Story here on One News.
Now, it was a busy day today in this covered court over in Marikina, where rice retailers in the city received their 15,000 peso livelihood assistance from the Department of Trade and Industry. But for some, they went home empty-handed. Some of the retailers who were there had problems with their names as listed on the master list. Now, according to the DTI, around 1,100 registered retailers in Metro Manila will receive the subsidy, even those who had problems today.
Medyo nalungkot, ma'am, dahil ito lang, ma'am, inaasahan din namin na medyo makabawi. Malaki kay nayangan talaga namin kasi minsan lang ito mangyari na magkaroon kami ng ganito na ayuda.
Hiling ko dahil siyempre tamang dito address, tama yung pangalan ko. O ngayon dapat i-assist na lang nila. Mag-absent ka sa trabaho kung may trabaho ka, ngayon lang pagkakataon. 'Di ba kung wala, kung di makakakuha.
But for those who have received their subsidies, they seem to have this common reaction to the price cap.
Kaya naman ibaba yung presyo ng bigas. Dahil siyempre, malaking tulong na rin yan na naibigay sa amin yung 15,000 na binigay ni...
Pero kung ibababa sa 41 pesos at 45,
hindi naman siguro kakayanin.
Depende pa rin sa presyo at kalidad ng bigas. Kasi yung 41 pesos na mabibili sa palengke, parang hindi na makakain talaga. Dapat po talaga babaan po yung bigas dahil yun po yung unang kailangan ng tao.
para makabili rin kayo ng mura.
Para makapagbenta rin kami ng mura at makabili kami ng mura.
Still on subsidies, the government was supposed to start rolling out fuel subsidies for drivers and operators today as oil prices continue to climb. However, drivers say that they have yet to receive the promised assistance. Drivers were supposed to receive subsidies ranging from 1,000 to 10,000 pesos each today. But until this afternoon, the promised subsidies have yet to be credited to their bank accounts. The LTFRB is also unsure of the reason behind the delay.
Mayroon lang din po silang banking procedure po para po dyan. Pero sigurado po yon na makikredit po nila at bibigyan po nila ng prioridad. Ina-assure naman po tayo na yung priority po ay ibibigay po nila gaya po ng dati. Hopefully, mga tong araw po na ito, may siguro mga 5 to 10% may credit na po nila bukas, mga ganun po.
Now, while subsidies are being distributed, the LTFRB says that they are considering to increase fares before the year ends. The LTFRB also said that a provisional or temporary fare hike could be implemented by November, but they're still studying by how much this increase will be. Since January of this year, the prices of diesel have gone up to over 10 pesos per liter and 15 pesos a liter for gasoline prices.
We know the necessity of a fare increase. However, binabalanse rin ho namin sa pangangailangan ng buong bansa. Dahil pag tinaasan ho namin yung presyo ng pamasahe po, malaki pong epekto nito sa ekonomiya at magtataasan ho halos lahat ng presyo.
Do over-the-counter cold medicines work, or is it just a placebo effect? Well, a panel of experts for the U.S. Food and Drug Administration have found that it's more of the latter. The advisory panel said over-the-counter medicines made with phenylephrine are ineffective. The panel voted unanimously that this common drug found in pharmacies and drugstores actually doesn't improve nasal congestion. The U.S. FDA usually follows the recommendation of its expert panel, but they're not obligated to do so. Phenylephrine is a major component in medicines like Benadryl, Advil, and Tylenol, or in our case, Neozep and BioFlu. If the agency does heed the panel's advice, it would mean that a lot of cold and flu medicines on the market now would no longer be available over the counter, at least in the U.S.
Up next, we will get to know more about social media personality and content creator Tony Fowler as she joins us here in the studio. Catch that when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News.
You're still watching The Big Story here on One News.
Now from YouTube to TikTok to even a television series, social media personality Tony Fowler has seemingly done it all. Let's get to know her more as she joins us here live in studio. Good evening, Tony, and welcome to The Big Story.
Yes, hello. Hello po. Good evening sa inyo lahat.
Tony, you're well known as Mommy Oni.
Yes,
Let's
po.
start with that. Saan po nanggaling yung pangalan, Mommy Oni?
Ang pangalan ko po kasi Tony. So,
Okay.
dahil bulol yung baby ko, Oni.
Oni.
Oo.
So, real name mo talaga Tony.
Yes
It's
po,
not
Tony.
short for something else.
Tony Marie. Kasi
Tony
yung
Marie.
sister ko po, Marie Tony. Hindi na nag-isip yung parents
No,
ko.
seryoso?
Yes po, yes po. Hindi na sila nag-isip.
And then yung parents mo, Tony and Marie.
Antonio po, at saka Maria.
Maria.
Kaya parang ganun.
Kaya naman.
Opo.
Oh, so actually, Mommy Oni, isa lang yung anak mo, but you're always seen on social media with a lot of kids. Now, apparently, you all live in one big happy family house.
Yes po.
And
Kasi mga pinsan ko masipag, kaya marami akong pamangkin. Mga kasi hardworking sila, gano'n.
that's
So,
such a
For
nice
humanity,
setup.
nagdadagdag ng...
Opo.
Actually, ganun din ako lumaki. No, parang it's very Filipino.
Opo,
And then,
opo.
do you support the whole family? Do they all help you create your content?
Nung una po, ako lang po talaga lahat. Tapos nung medyo nagiging okay na at nagkakaroon na sila ng sarili nilang kita, ganun. Tumutulong na po sila sa akin.
So you started as a vlogger talaga?
Ay, hindi po. Dancer po.
Ah, okay.
Yes po. So, yun po yung mga naging racket ko.
On social media or sa shows?
Kung saan po. Nung una shows po, sa Showtime po, 3 years po akong backup dancer doon.
Okay.
Sa ibang mga TV
So
shows
exposed ka na to
Opo.
media, traditional media, way before
Yes po.
nag-social media.
Tapos kung saan-saan niya din. Tapos nag-viral lang po yung sayaw ko sa social media kasi nakapanty ako noon nung sayaw ko. Nag-viral po siya. Ganon po siya. So medyo pa sexy
Wait,
po.
sorry, you said may bayad?
Po, nag-viral po siya.
Ah, nag-viral.
Yes,
So,
nag-viral
I heard
po siya.
may bayad. Okay.
Tapos yun po hanggang sa, may nagko-comment po sa akin na bakit hindi ko i-try mag-vlog. Nag-try po ako, first vlog ko is October 2019. Yun talaga yung kinarir ko po siya. So, yun po.
But now, parang you earn more from social media as a vlogger?
Yes po.
I
And
imagine
in
she has
real life.
4.8 million YouTube followers.
going 8 million.
Going 8 million?
8 million na?
Okay,
Mali yung
so-
notes ko.
Baka po Instagram po yun.
Baka
So
Instagram.
now you make more money from social media?
Yes po.
So, full, yun yung main, would you say that's your
Anong
main?
range? If you...
Mga monthly naman ako milyonarya, so okay na siya. Ganun naman siya.
7 figures a month?
Mga ganun po.
Wow! Okay, I need to ask, naka-save ka na ba? What did you do with the money? Are you able to, ewan ko, naka-invest ka na ba in something?
May mga maling investment, syempre. Like, for example, nagustuhan mo yung bahay, akala mo yun na nagpa-renovate ka, di natuloy. May mga ganun. May mga mali akong desisyon. Then, syempre, marami din akong natulungan na family members ko na in the end, iniwanan din ako. May mga ganun na they promise na tutulong. Kasi nga Pinoy, di ba? Tulungan kita, tulungan mo ako. Di ba usual ganun?
Yes.
So, may mga mali, pero meron din naman din kami mga kahit paano mga bahay, mga sasakyan kami nagagamit sa araw-araw. And hindi rin naman ako maluho. Kaya, kasi laki ako sa hirap talaga squatter ako. So, nung time na nagkaroon, tama, dapat dito natin dalhin. So, wala kang makikita mga kung ano-anong signature na mga kung ano-anong gamit ko, mga ganun.
When you say squatter ka, literal? Nakatira, informal settler kayo before?
Yes po, yes po.
Literal yun?
Opo.
Can you tell us about that? And is that why you went into dancing para lang maka-earn ng money?
Yes po, kasi nag-try po talaga ako before na mag-aral. Kasi syempre, kailangan po talaga mag-aral, di ba? Iba pa rin yung proper talaga na education. Pero hindi ko kinaya kasi naging crew ako ng Jollibee. Under Seeds program, sa pag-aaralin kanila. Kaso hindi natutugma yung schedule, si ganyan. Hindi pwede. Kasi hindi kayo pwede mag-adjust sa'yo. Kasi alam mo mag-adjust yung di ba? So yung school naman hindi pwede. Kailangan ito ibigay nilang setting kasi sa scholar kayo. So magulo hanggang
So may scholarship yung Jollibee, pero medyo
Hindi ka
magulo din yung
makakapag-
implementation.
Yes, nung time na yun, kasi nagsisimula pa lang yung program na yun before. So, tinry ko ng tinry. Nung nag-dancer din ako nun sa TV, nag-try ako mag-aral. Hindi rin kinaya kasi pagkarating mo, ang iisip mo yung steps eh. So, nang sayaw, wala na pumapasok, yung ganun. So,
Wait, sorry, paano ka na-recruit as a dancer?
Ano lang po talaga, may tumawag lang po sa akin na kaibigan ko. Tapos sabi niya, uy, may audition. Eh sa school, parang sayo-sayo ka lang sa program lang. Wala po talaga akong training. So, yun lang. Sabi, try mo lang. So, nung pinasok ko, sige, bahala na. May mga requirements pala, di ko na alam. Bahala na. Parang ganun po.
So, paano ka naman napunta sa singing? Kasi, so, from... Okay, ang haba nung lahat na ginawa mo kasi. No ba? From dancing, and
Yes
then
po.
recently, matunog yung mga music videos mo,
Opo.
and then your songs. Of course, it has caused some controversy.
Yes po.
May ibang nakakita nung point, I think, that you're trying to push, which is female empowerment. Meron ding salungat.
Opo,
What would
opo.
you have to say about that?
Ang nangyari naman po kasi noon, ang talent ko po kasi talaga, at saka ang passion ko, magpapansin. Yun po talaga. Ayun po. So,
Entertain.
Opo. So, ang nangyari, gusto ko talagang ma-experience magka-music video. Kaso pangit po yung boses ko. So, nag-rap na lang ako. Nag-rap ako.
Okay. So, yun ang katotohanan.
Yes.
Magaling ka naman mag-rap, feeling mo.
Hindi din. First time ko po yun. First time ko po yun. Pero nung lumabas siya, medyo makatotohanan siya sa ibang mga babae. May mga ibang nakaka-relate na may ganun naman talagang side. Yung ibang babae, hindi ko po nilalahat, pero meron pong ganun na hindi lang inaamin. So parang ganun lang din para sa mga nakaka-relate.
Bothered ka pa ba sa mga batikos, negative comments, haters, bashers?
Pagdating sa anak ko lagi. Alam nila yung push button ko, alam nila yun. So alam din nila na nasasaktan ako, pero
How do you protect her nga at this age? Ano yung plans mo for her? Kasi sobrang exposed niya to the 8 million followers.
hindi siya masyadong exposed.
Talaga?
Lalo na sa
Okay.
ngayon, oo. Hinahayaan ko siya na, ako na-enjoy niya konti yung TikTok dahil bata, sige, pero with our guidance, pinag-focus ko siya sa school.
Okay.
Hindi ko siya masyadong pinipressure. Kahit siya nagpilit na mag-YouTube din, mapapansin nga ng mga tao, walang masyadong upload yung anak ko. Minsan wala din sa channel ko. Inahayaan ko siya maging bata, maging normal
Pero
siya.
so shocker ba is strict si Mommy
Yeah.
Oni? Strict kayo?
Yes.
Hindi, kaya nga, but you know, earlier you started the show saying na meron kang video na you were
Yes,
dancing in
yes.
your panties, right? So, hindi ka ba worried that you're setting the wrong example? And I have to ask because I have a daughter of my
Yes,
own
po,
and
yes.
I'm very careful what I do around her. Kasi kinakopya nila eh.
Yes, po,
right?
yes,
Diba? Everything we do, they know. Kunyari, I work on my computer. Alam na niya that that's work time for mommy. So
Yes,
she
yes.
pretends on her
Apo.
toy laptop.
Kasi
Hindi
ikaw
ka ba
yung
worried?
idol niya talaga
Oo,
eh.
hindi ka ba
Apo.
worried na you're setting the wrong example?
Nung una po, natatakot ako kasi yung po yung laging, it's the same po, yung mga sinasabi sa akin ng mga tao. Nung tumagal, na-realize ko na kailangan ko lang talaga maging honest sa anak ko. So, bago po niya mapanood, bago may mapanood sa kanya, lahat sinabi ko na, anak, ganito si mami. Anak, ito kasi alam kong way, hindi ko alam kung meron pa bang iba, kailangan kitang buhayin. Ito yung way kung paano kumita. Ngayon, anak, nasa sa'yo yan kung magiging ganyan ka ba paglaki mo. Mami, ayoko po. Di maganda. Bad example ako. At least, di ba, alam mo, hindi yan tama. Okay. So, anak, sa tingin mo sa ginagawa ni mami, ganito, ikaw po yan, mami. Pero makikita mo sa anak ko, nagiging salungat ko siya. Dahil gusto ko siya maging kakampi. Ayokong sa iba niya malaman, sa iba niya mapanood. Sinasabi ko, ang tiyaga ko mag-explain, anak, ganito si mami, lumaki akong ganito, wala akong guidance, wala akong parents. So sana, hindi ka maging ito, I'm doing my best para maging ganyan ka. So yung pag-i-explain na, ma-feel ko na, anak, walang magkukwento sa iba, hindi niyo ko kayang siraan kasi naunahan ko na kayo. Ano na yan, sinaga ko talaga yung binigyan ko ng oras, ng pag-upo, ng mga pang-baby steps na pag-explain. Kasi
At
hindi ko
what
naman-
age? At what age was she?
Nag-start yun na i-ano ko sa kanya, i-open ko nung 9 siya. Kasi medyo na-open
Alam na
yung mga
niya eh,
bata sa
mag-search.
social
Oo,
media.
exactly. Oo.
Which is, ano din kasi, lalo na nag-pandemic, online class, may kaharap silang laptop, di ba, mga cellphone or iPad. So, kailangan ko maging tapat sa kanya, maging honest at maging open.
Wait, you mean to say, when she comes of age, hindi mo rin siya papayagan to be a content creator?
Kung mafe-feel
follow
niya,
in your footsteps?
ano naman siya, kung mafe-feel niya, I think, hayaan ko siya. Pero gusto ko lang sana, yung pangarap namin sa kanya na makapagtapos siya.
Nakapag-aral
Oo, like, tsaka hindi ko siya pinipressure sa school. Like kung sinasabi, anak, kahit walang medal, basta may diploma. Basta lang, anak, magkaroon lang sa family, kasi sa family namin wala nakapagtapos.
Plan mo ba magtapos? Bumalik sa school? At
Sa ngayon kasi, wala na ding oras. Dahil,
Tsaka medyo
wala
7 figures na.
Tsaka nagtatry po kasi ako magnegosyo, kaya
And between
hindi
the
ko...
diploma
Wait, tell
and
us
7
about your
figures.
negosyo. Kasi lahat na nagawa mo.
Opo. Nagtatry po ako sa mga skincare, ganun po siya.
Kaya bang ganda ng skin? Ang ganda ng skin ni Tony, guys. Nakaka-insecure. Hindi, pero ano to, parang beauty clinic or beauty product?
Beauty products po. Ganun
May
po
partner
siya.
ka ba? Or sariling sayo lang yan?
May partner po ako doon isa. Kasi hindi ko kakayanin ng ako eh. Lalo na medyo bobita ako sa mga bagay-bagay. So, yun po.
Apparently, hindi ka daw shy about plastic surgery.
Yes po.
Ano yung...
Lahat po nang nakikita niyo, gawa po to. Lahat po. Kahit...
Mahal yan!
Opo. Wala lang ngayon yung kuko ko, tinanggal ko, pero lahat po talaga.
Actually, hindi yun yung question ko, but thank you for admitting that.
Opo.
But the question is, ano yung message mo to people who are... Because there's still a stigma at the moment. Kahit na 2023 na, people are still judgmental about, plastic surgery. What would you say? What's your message?
Ako po talaga, sobrang proud po talaga ako na ako po kasi talaga ang nag-open ng retoke sa Pinas na maging open po tayo. At vinlog ko po talaga lahat yan, lahat ng journey ko, lahat ng pagsusuka ko, 7 days recovery. Hanggang sa in-injection na ako ng general anesthesia na tumirik na yung mata ko, pinapakita ko talaga sa kanila. Kasi maraming natatakot, pero kung pakiramdam nyo, yun yung makakatulong sa inyo na mag-boost yung self-confidence nyo, bakit naman hindi? Wala namang masamang itry, pero naniniwala ako na, doon tayo sa
Be
safe.
educated and
Oo,
know
doon
all
tayo
the
sa
doctors and
safe. Huwag tayo sa mga doktor kwak-kwak sa tabi-tabi porque mas mura. Kasi minsan mas doon tayo napapahamak. At nadali po ako niyan. Kaya talagang inano ko yan.
At syempre, nasa vlog mo rin.
Yes
for
po.
sure.
Kaya ang advice ko sa kanila, basta love naman tayo ni God. At alam ko, love tayo ni God, mas masaya siya pag happy tayo.
Tony, question, when all this is said and done, what would you want people to remember you, or how would you want people to remember you? Ano yung, kumbaga, pinaka-cause or advocacy mo sa dami ng ginagawa mo?
Opo.
Ano yung pinaka-number 1 doon sa listahan?
Totoo.
Totoo.
Yes.
Just be real.
Yes po. Minsan napapaisip ako, yung pagpapakatotoo ko pa ba, nagpapakatao pa ako. May times na gano'n. Kasi iba yun di ba? Minsan pwede ko sabihin sa'yo na, ang pahit mo masyado. Di ba? Pagpapakatotoo yun. Pero nagpapakatao ka pa to comment and mali yung pinagdadaanan ka. Pero nandun ako sa gitna and ang gusto ko maalala nila sa akin is lagi kang tumulong. Kasi di ba sabi nga nila, tumulong tayo, sabi ni God. So,
Yun. So from a practical perspective, no,
Yes.
now people know you're earning millions. And ang dami pa ring mahihirap sa Pilipinas, ang dami katulad mo, where you came from. Ano po what's your way to give back in a practical way?
kasi yun nga, may nagsabi sa akin noon sa church na alala ko nung bata ako. Parang di ako pala church, pero nagsisimba din po ako. Yung sabi na, wala kang ginagawang masama, pero may ginagawa ka ba mabuti? Di ba? So,
Sinishare mo ba
oo, kaya yung mga tao kasi ngayon, meron kasi tayong mga titawag na nauuso yan online limos, di ba? So marami ganun, hihingi ng tulong, ganyan. Ako, pag na-feel ko na may nakaka-appreciate sa mga walang kwenta kong ginagawa sa social media, nag-give back ako in a way ng, may mga bagay kasi na may gusto yung tao na hindi laging bigas, hindi laging yung canned goods. Minsan gusto nila ng iPhone. Minsan.
Oo nga, grabe ka bumigay ng iPhone.
High level naman.
Gusto ko din ng iPhone.
Tinan mo naman phone ko.
iPhone 15.
Kaka-announce lang yung iPhone.
Minsan
iPhone 6
hindi
pa
yung
lang ako.
hindi yung needs. Minsan bigay mo din yung wants. Pero kung isipin mo, kailangan talaga natin ng telepono ngayon. Bawat tao, lalo na ngayon, ang daming pwedeng pagkakitaan online na nakakatulong sa kanila. Or kahit sa klase, mga nag-aaral, mga ganun po.
May plano ka ba na i-institutionalize tong ways mo of helping and reaching out? Like, maybe put up a Tony Fowler Foundation or
May
Mommy...
foundation po ako.
Meron ka na. Siyempre, lahat na talaga.
May Wish by Tony Fowler, meron po ako. Lahat kasi galing sa bulsa ko, kaya hindi ko siya matodo. Wala po akong sponsor. Lahat po pinaghirapan ko. At alam ko din naman na syempre give back yun kasi wala din akong hugutin kung hindi po nila ako pinanood. At kung hindi po sila nakimarites, nakichismis, mga ganon. Sinimulan ko siya sa mga tao na insecure sa sarili o may pinagdadaanan at gusto nila ma-enhance. So may 5 na po akong winners na ongoing po ngayon na ipin nila tsaka buong katawan. Mga gusto po nilang i-enhance.
Hindi ka ba nag-criticize that maybe you're just doing it for the content? For the views?
Hindi po. Hindi naman po. Kasi lahat nga po, hindi halos naka-video. Tulad nung ngayon, pending po siya. Hindi naman po.
That's good.
What makes you stand out, no, from millions and millions of influencers, TikTokers, vloggers, and nasusustain ba yon over time? Or syempre merong bagong Tony nasusulpot, tapos yun na naman yung new trend. Paano mo
that's a
na
good
keep
question.
yung edge
Do you
mo?
reinvent yourself every
Yes.
so often? And is that conscious? Yung wait, parang konti lang yung views ko today, kailangan ko yata mag-change strategy. May mga ganun ba?
May ganun talaga kasi kailangan mong aralin para, alam mo yun, hindi mo pwedeng magsistay ka lang. Kasi marami nagte-trending, pero paano mo ikikip yung hype?
Okay.
Diba? Paano kang hindi mawawala sa
Paano nga?
limelight? Nag-iisip
Hindi daw niya sasabihin sa
Hindi, siguro sina-challenge ko yung sarili ko every year. Ano kaya yung gusto kong gawin this year? Sige, ngayon vlogger ako. Next year okay pa naman yung vlogger, pero sige, try ko naman na mag-reach na puntahan yung mga tao na nanonood sa akin. Okay, sige, next year, nag-offer ako, sige, try ko mag-artista. So, okay, may na-offeran ako, sige, baka next year, host ako, di ba? Parang ganon. Malay niyo po, paltan ko po kayo dito. Ako po yung
Palit na lang tayo. Ako na yung mag-YouTube para sa'yo, Tony.
Ayun po.
Alright, well, thank you so much for
Thank you
gracing
po.
us with your presence and all the best in all of your engagements.
Thank you.
Moving forward, maraming salamat. That was, of course, social media personality Tony Fowler joining us in studio today.
Eto na, dapat nandito si Tony, bawal siyang paalisin kasi time na para sa ating big picture tonight. And it's got everyone in the tech industry and everyone here in the studio buzzing. Of course, we already said it, none other than Apple unveiling its new iPhone 15, 15 Pro, and Pro Max lineup. Now, is there really a big difference with the iPhone 14? Well, the answer is both a yes and no. Now, while the look is still quite the same, there are new features in the iPhone 15. And one of those changes is that Apple has finally made the switch to USB-C chargers. The iPhone 15 also comes in a titanium case in 5 colorways as compared to the iPhone 14's 6 available colorways. The price? Well, based on Apple's website, it will be sold for $799 or around 56,000 pesos here in the Philippines come September 22. We can expect long lines ulit or the night before September 22. So, simulan ng pilahan, no?
Yeah, but
September 21.
At the same time, though, some of the criticism online is that number one, apart from the USB-C charger and the
Nothing
case,
changed.
exactly,
yeah?
it's slightly better camera. But
A new button.
Longer battery.
They changed the button
Yeah.
on the side daw. So,
Well,
Tony,
which are minor
nag-reserve ka na ba?
Yes po.
Nag-reserve ka
Pwede
na?
bang sumali sa raffle mo because I need one. Kawawa naman.
Alright, so, unahan na, no? Sa page ni Tony para sa promo. But that's it for the show tonight.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.
thanks for tuning in. Have a good night.